There is a force within you, raw, untamed, and immensely powerful. It has the potential to propel you into extraordinary success, boundless creativity, and magnetic influence. But, left unchecked, it can just as easily sabotage your focus, drain your discipline, and trap you in an endless cycle of momentary pleasure and long-term regret. Napoleon Hill called it one of the least understood yet most potent energies of the human mind. And history's greatest minds didn't ignore it. They mastered it. The real question is, what did they know that most people never even suspect? Have you ever wondered why, even with all the books, tools, and motivational content, so many people still struggle to move forward, stay consistent, and build something meaningful? What if the issue was never a lack of motivation, but a misdirection of energy? What if the very force behind your deepest desires could be harnessed, transformed, not into suppression, but into unstoppable creative power? Would you still see it as a distraction, or finally recognize it as your hidden fuel? Napoleon Hill didn't include sexual energy in his philosophy to shock or scandalize. He did it because he understood that within sexual desire lies a divine creative power, a mental and spiritual dynamo that, when redirected, becomes the greatest ally of achievement. This isn't about denying who you are. It's about elevating what you are capable of. Fire can burn, yes, but fire can also forge. And those who learn to transmute it, rather than be consumed by it, walk a path few ever dare to follow. The true line between dreamers and doers, between those who merely desire and those who build legacies, is not intelligence, money, or talent. It is mastery of energy, transmutation. The great minds, Edison, Lincoln, Ford, even Da Vinci, they all discovered how to redirect sexual energy into creative brilliance, spiritual purpose, and relentless drive. They didn't deny the force, they elevated it. This is not a video about morality. This is a video about strategy, about power, about awakening a part of yourself that has been ignored, misunderstood, or misused for too long. Because once you learn how to channel your sexual energy into your goals, everything changes. Your focus, your productivity, your vision, your presence in the world. So now, the real question becomes, are you ready to master what has always been mastering you? There is a silent force that has shaped the world more than any weapon, any war, or any government. It is not taught in schools. It is rarely spoken of in public. And yet, it lives within each of us, waiting, often wasting, until someone dares to redirect it. This force is sexual energy. But what if I told you that the same desire that burns in secret is the very spark that built empires, wrote symphonies, and birthed revolutions? That behind every extraordinary achievement, there is not just discipline, but a redirected passion? Napoleon Hill didn't whisper about this power. He confronted it. He revealed a truth that most people are too afraid to even consider. The energy that fuels sexual desire is also the fuel behind creative genius. He called it sexual transmutation, a word that means to transform, to channel, to convert the physical into the spiritual, the emotional into the intellectual. Hill believed that the most powerful minds in history didn't suppress their sexual energy. They transmuted it into ambition, creativity, and relentless pursuit of purpose. But here's the uncomfortable reality. Most people never master this principle. They drown in distraction, wasting their most potent force on momentary pleasure instead of long-term legacy. They don't lack talent. They lack direction. They don't need more motivation. They need to understand the engine inside of them and how to drive it with precision. Because once you harness this power, your capacity for success, clarity, and creation becomes limitless. So I ask you now, not as a viewer, but as someone standing at the edge of their own potential, what if your greatest breakthroughs have been trapped in your most primal instincts? What if the key to becoming who you were meant to be isn't outside of you, but hidden in the very energy you've been told to fear or suppress? In the next few minutes, we are going to uncover one of the most controversial, misunderstood, and transformational principles of personal development. This is not about theory. This is about unlocking a force within you that, when directed, has the power to reshape your destiny. Are you ready to hear what most will never dare to understand? They never told you this, but the same energy that creates life is the very force that can build empires, write masterpieces, and manifest the wildest dreams you've ever dared to hold. Napoleon Hill didn't whisper this truth, he declared it boldly. Sexual energy, when transmuted, becomes the highest form of fuel a human being can harness. It's not about repression, it's not about shame, it's about mastery. It's about learning to take the most primal force within us and elevate it to a level of pure, unstoppable creation. Most people let this energy leak through meaningless indulgence, but the few, those who know the secret, redirect it with laser focus toward purpose. Think about it. What if the restlessness you feel isn't lack of motivation, but a river of untapped power begging to be directed? What if the distraction, the procrastination, even the guilt you carry are just symptoms of misdirected creative force? Hill called this sex transmutation, and he believed that every great man or woman who changed the course of history had first conquered this inner battlefield, the battlefield of desire, and not by denying it but by transfiguring it, using it as a spiritual weapon to sculpt their reality. There's a reason why artists, inventors, and trailblazers are often labeled as passionate. Their obsession wasn't accidental. It was alchemy. They learned to shift the energy that once burned through their bodies into the fire that lit the path before them. The more they channeled it, the clearer their vision became. Their actions weren't random, they were divinely focused. Their results weren't luck, they were inevitable. Because sexual energy, when transformed, becomes creative genius in motion. Yet, in a world saturated with instant gratification, this truth is buried. We're taught to release, to scroll, to numb. We're seduced by the illusion of pleasure and robbed of the power of purpose. Hill's wisdom is a rebellion against that, a call to wake up, to stop wasting the very force that could be your bridge between mediocrity and greatness. You're not here to chase empty highs. You're here to master the current that pulses within you, to redirect it, to rise with it. So let me ask you, what would happen if, starting today, you made a decision to no longer squander that sacred energy? What if you chose to channel it into your goals, your vision, your calling? The shift wouldn't just be mental, it would be biological. Your discipline would sharpen, your charisma would radiate, and your results would explode. Because when the mind is clear and the will is aligned with transmuted energy, reality starts to bend in your favor. And that, my friend, is no longer just theory. That is power in motion. To truly understand the magnitude of sexual transmutation, we must confront one uncomfortable truth. Most people are slaves to their urges. Not because they are weak, but because no one ever taught them that those urges are not meant to be satisfied. They're meant to be redirected. Napoleon Hill uncovered this secret while studying hundreds of the most powerful, successful people in the world. And, time after time, he saw the same pattern. Those who rose above the average were those who had learned to convert sexual energy into ambition, drive, clarity, and resilience. They didn't waste it. They transformed it. This energy is life force. It is sacred. It is raw power coursing through your veins, waiting for you to give it shape. But when it's left unchanneled, it breeds distraction, confusion, and chaos. It becomes a fire without direction, burning everything it touches. But the moment you decide to take control, to channel that fire into something greater than yourself, you awaken a level of focus and intensity that few will ever taste. This is where legends are born. Not in the comfort zone, not in indulgence, but in the furnace of discipline, where desire becomes vision and vision becomes destiny. Hill taught that sexual energy is not just physical, it's creative. It fuels your imagination, it sharpens your intuition, and it strengthens your will. When transmuted, it unlocks doors that logic alone cannot open. You begin to sense opportunities before they appear. You speak with a conviction that commands respect. You walk into a room and people feel something different, even if they can't name it. That is the silent authority of someone who has mastered their inner world. And that mastery starts with energy. Not emotion, not motivation, energy. Let me put it this way. Every great work of art, every empire built, every speech that moved nations, it all started as raw, unshaped energy within someone who dared to hold it, refine it, and give it meaning. You don't need more time. You don't need more motivation. What you need is alignment. The alignment between your desires and your destiny, between your instinct and your intention. That is where your power has been waiting, quietly, patiently, persistently. So here's the question. Will you keep burning your energy in circles, or will you finally rise above the noise and forge it into something eternal? The choice is not easy. It requires sacrifice. But within that sacrifice lies the birth of your true power. And once you feel it, once you taste what it means to be fully alive, fully focused, and fully in command, there is no going back. Because the life you've been craving is not on the other side of pleasure. It's on the other side of mastery. When Napoleon Hill spoke of sexual transmutation, he wasn't offering a trick for temporary discipline. He was revealing a blueprint for eternal greatness. He understood that within every man and woman resides a volcano of untapped potential, and the ignition key is desire. Not just any desire, but the most primal, most persistent one, the sexual impulse. And he dared to say what few had the courage to admit, that this energy, if left unchecked, becomes the greatest source of distraction. But if harnessed, it becomes the most potent force of personal transformation. Think of it this way. Nature does not give us intense impulses without purpose. The same energy that creates life was designed to fuel creation in all its forms: business, innovation, art, influence. But what happens when that energy is scattered across late-night scrolls, short-term cravings, and meaningless indulgences? It fades. And with it, so does your vision, your fire, your calling. That's why the most successful people in history often carried an air of mystery, magnetism, and mental clarity. They were not chasing pleasure. They were channeling power. Sexual transmutation begins with the decision to see your energy not as something to tame, but as something to train. Like a wild stallion, it has unimaginable strength, but only when you learn to ride it with intention. That's what separates the average from the extraordinary. Anyone can follow impulse. It takes a visionary to redirect it. And when you do, your confidence begins to rise. Not because you're suppressing who you are, but because you're finally owning who you were meant to be. There is no success without sacrifice. But the irony is, when you redirect your sexual energy into your goals, your dreams stop feeling like sacrifices. They start feeling like obsessions. You no longer need to be pushed. You are pulled by something bigger than you. That is the moment when procrastination dies. Not from discipline alone, but from desire realigned. Hill wasn't telling us to kill desire, he was telling us to give it purpose. And that shift changes everything. So ask yourself right now, what would happen if the very energy you've been wasting became the fuel behind your mission? What could you build, become, and ignite? Most people will never know because they are too afraid to explore that part of themselves. But if you're still here, still listening, still burning, then you are not most people. You're standing at the edge of something ancient and sacred, and all it takes is a decision to cross. True mastery of sexual energy is not found in repression, but in redirection. This is where most people stumble. They believe the answer is denial. But Hill knew better. He taught that energy must flow, not be blocked. When you try to suppress desire, it fights back. But when you give it a mission, it becomes your ally, your most loyal soldier. The mistake is thinking you have to become less of yourself to become more powerful. In truth, you must become more aware of yourself to access that power. This is why so few ever reach the summit of their potential, because they fear their own fire. They've been taught to run from it, to numb it, to bury it under convenience and comfort. But fire, when honored and directed, becomes the forge of destiny. And you, whether you realize it or not, are already holding the torch. The question is, will you light the path ahead, or will you burn in your own hesitation? What Hill discovered, and what many still fail to understand, is that the mind and the body are not at war. They are instruments in the same orchestra. And when the instrument of sexual energy is played with discipline and vision, it creates a melody that awakens everything in you. Clarity, charisma, courage. Suddenly, you speak with more purpose. You move with more certainty. People feel something different when they're around you, even if they can't explain it. That's not mystery. That's mastery. You begin to notice a transformation, not only in your results, but in your very presence. There's a silence inside you that used to be noise. There's a hunger that used to be scattered. You're no longer chasing pleasure, you're becoming purpose. And this shift doesn't just change your goals, it changes how you breathe, how you walk into a room, how you handle resistance. Because when your energy is unified, your life becomes unstoppable. So here you are, with a fire that was never meant to be extinguished, only aimed. Hill gave us the map. Now the journey is yours. Will you spend your energy or invest it? Will you keep waiting for the right moment, or realize the moment is waiting for the right you? The choice, as it always was, lives in the silence between impulse and intention. When sexual energy is transmuted with intention, the world begins to respond differently. What was once chaos becomes clarity. What was once distraction becomes direction. You're no longer moving randomly. You are being pulled by something greater than your urges, a vision. Hill called this definiteness of purpose, and when your creative force is aligned with it, you tap into something timeless. something that bends reality in your favor, not through magic, but through mastery. The average person lives life from the outside in, constantly reacting, constantly pulled by fleeting pleasures and fears. But the one who transmutes lives from the inside out. They are not ruled by their emotions, but they are deeply connected to them. They don't silence desire, they elevate it. Their goals are not just ambitions, they are sacred contracts with the highest version of themselves. And every act of discipline is a step closer to becoming that person. The beauty of this path is not just in what you accomplish, but in who you become. You begin to embody certainty. You become the kind of person whose very presence commands attention without ever demanding it. Why? Because you're not chasing approval, you're radiating alignment. You've stopped leaking your power into temporary highs and started channeling it into permanent transformation. That's the secret no one talks about. It's not about suppression, it's about sovereignty. You start to realize that sexual transmutation is not just about success in the material world, it's about spiritual alignment. About remembering who you are beneath the noise of impulse and distraction. You're not your cravings, you're the creator of what those cravings can become. Every time you choose vision over impulse, you're not just building a result, you're building a legacy. And that legacy begins with inner power. So now the question is not, do you have the energy? The question is, are you ready to own it? Because within you lies a force capable of shaping worlds, not just externally, but internally. Use it blindly and it burns. Use it wisely and it builds empires. You've walked through the fire. Now it's time to rise from it, clear, focused, and untouchable. There comes a moment in every journey when knowledge becomes knowing, when the words you've heard are no longer just ideas, but echoes of something you've always felt inside. This was never just about discipline, or energy, or ambition. It was about reclaiming the power you were born with. The same power that built empires, sparked revolutions, and created the greatest works of art and innovation in human history. That power lives in you. It always has. Sexual transmutation is not a theory. It is a choice. A choice to rise when the world wants you to remain average. A choice to turn what could destroy you into what defines you. A choice to stop reacting to life and start creating it with intention. Every principle we've explored, from desire to purpose to self-mastery, was never separate. They were always parts of the same map. A map that leads you back to yourself. Think about it. What could you become if you stopped leaking energy into distractions and began investing it in your destiny? What doors would open if you mastered your impulses instead of being mastered by them? The most extraordinary lives are not lived by those who avoid temptation, but by those who transform it. Because when you stop escaping yourself, you start encountering your true potential. And now, maybe for the first time, you can feel it. The quiet fire inside, waiting not to be extinguished but directed. That fire is not your enemy. It is your compass. And if you follow it with clarity, with courage, and with conviction, it will lead you not just to success, but to meaning. You were not meant to wander. You were meant to wield, not to chase, but to channel. So I leave you with this question, not to answer with words, but with your life. What if the very thing you've been resisting is the key to becoming who you were always meant to be? If this message stirred something in you, let it ripple. Share it. Reflect on it. And if you're ready to walk deeper into this journey, subscribe, leave your thoughts below, and activate the bell so you don't miss what comes next. Because this is only the beginning.